I'm Marty Frank, and this is a recap of a presentation I gave at ACEEE Summer Study in 2016. Who's participating and who's not? This is the title of the talk, and the research question my co-author, Seth Nowak of ACEEE and I sought to answer in our study. I came to this question about who is and is not participating in energy efficiency programs after 6 years in program implementation and another 6 years in evaluation. I had a hypothesis that program participants were wealthier and whiter than the general population, and I had, in fact I still have, the conviction that if this were true, it's a problem that needs to be articulated and addressed. So the goal of our study was to test the hypothesis that participants aren't representative of the general population, and to do it systematically, but also quickly and inexpensively. And I think we succeeded in all of these things. We've established an approach that's rigorous and replicable, and our study took about 3 months to complete. So in the next 7 minutes, I'll tell you how we did it and what we found. Let's start with the how, our methodology. The most important thing to know is that this was a meta-study, or a research synthesis, meaning we didn't collect any new data. Our work was to systematically aggregate data on participant demographics from studies that other people had already done. The studies we used were all program evaluations, process and impact, conducted by third-party evaluators for the 3 major California investor-owned utilities and LADWP. The demographic data in these studies were typically obtained as part of the participant surveys that evaluators conducted during their evaluations. These were most often phone surveys that covered topics like satisfaction and ended with a few questions about the respondent. And it was those last few questions about the respondent that were of interest to us. The second most important thing to know is that our sample frame was comprehensive. We looked at every residential program evaluation conducted for the IOUs and LADWP for the 2010 to 2012 program cycle. This table gives a few of the big picture findings. In the columns, we have a selection of 4 programs, and in the rows, demographic characteristics. And as I noted in the summer study presentation, this is not a random sample of demographic characteristics. These are the characteristics associated in our society with power, status, and privilege. Some key items of note. First, looking down each column, we see that every program has its own unique participant profile. Also, the 2 programs in the leftmost columns, these are big budget programs. Home energy retrofits, known to the public as Energy Upgrade California, and appliance incentives. Together, they comprise nearly a third of the residential budget in California. And we can see that these 2 programs had a substantial proportion of participants with high status characteristics. And on the right, 2 what I call niche programs. These programs had budgets a tenth the size of the big budget programs. The in-language program provided efficiency information in languages other than English, and a direct install program for people in manufactured and mobile homes. Both of these niche programs had participant populations that looked nothing like one another, nor like the big budget programs, and both of them reached a segment of the population that represents substantially fewer high-status households. I want to add one more layer of information, and that is the distinction between 2 different types of programs. These come from economists: targeted and untargeted programs. A targeted program is open to anyone. It's not restricted, like a low-income program, but it is designed to engage participants with specific characteristics. The in-language program is a targeted program. And an untargeted program is most of what we have in energy efficiency. Participation is open to anyone, and the program isn't designed to engage with any particular population. Now I'll show just a few slides that dig a bit deeper into some of the income data we found, before I circle back and draw a conclusion about what this all means and what we ought to do about it. So, whole home retrofit programs. Here is one of the same numbers I just showed, 53% in the bright blue circle. This is the proportion of home retrofit participants who were what the Pew Research Center would call upper income households. Now we see that number in relationship to 28%, the proportion of all California households who are upper income, and 33%, the proportion of single-family homeowners who are upper income. And this is from the RAS, the utility's own population study. And here are some data from the appliance incentive programs. On the left, the income distribution of participants, nearly half of whom were upper income households. And on the right, the income distribution of non-participants, nearly 60% of whom were low income households. In this case, our non-participants are perhaps the best comparison population we could hope to have. These are people who were surveyed by evaluators and who said they bought an appliance of the type included in the program during the program period, but who were not looking for and did not buy an efficient model. And here we have data which were not in the first summary table. These are from the refrigerator recycling program, another big budget California program. Again, we're looking at the income distribution of participants on the left, and what we see is decidedly different from the home retrofit and appliance incentive programs. The income distribution of participants in the recycling program looks almost exactly like that of single-family homeowners in California. And unlike the other big budget programs, the recycling program captured a higher proportion of low-income households than in the general population. I'd like to pose a question. Do we have control over who participates? The issue of control has come up frequently as I've shared these findings, and I think these data show decisively that we do have control over who participates, and that we exercise this control during program design. Even more, we identified 3 design factors that influence participant demographics. There is more work to be done to explore these, and I want to give examples of the first 2. Buy-in cost is the amount a participant has to spend in order to be called a participant in one of our programs. Home retrofit programs have the highest buy-in cost of any residential efficiency program, an average of $6,000 nationwide, and in my experience, much higher. During the period of our study, there was a beautiful natural experiment, because for part of this 3-year period, ERA funding was available for retrofit measures, on top of the incentives the California utilities were already offering. The effect was to basically double the amount of incentives available to homeowners, while everything else about the program stayed the same. And what we see in the left shaded column is that when more incentives were available and participants' buy-in cost decreased, things changed. Participation went up, and those participants were qualitatively different. They had lower incomes, lower home values, and they tended to live inland rather than on the coast. Here's another example of the influence of program design on participant characteristics. We're looking at the race and ethnicity of participants in 2 different education-only programs. On the left, the in-language program, a targeted program, which provided efficiency information in in-person seminars conducted in Asian languages and Spanish. On the right, the online and paper audit program, an untargeted program, with information available primarily in English, some in Spanish, and distributed via the utility's website and a mail-in form. I think these data allow us to make a few arguments and suggest some calls to action. First, program design elements like buy-in cost have a direct influence on participant characteristics. When we apply these design elements with intention in a targeted program, it works. We succeed in engaging with our desired population. And when we employ design elements without intention in an untargeted program, the result is often a participant population that is not representative and skews towards high-status demographic characteristics. So if one agrees with these arguments, what should we do about it? Well, for evaluators, there's a clear call to do a better job creating knowledge about our participants by consistently collecting, reporting, and analyzing demographic data. Program designers and implemented have a part to play also to make use of these data in their designs and implementation plans. And it might be a stretch, but I think we can consider setting policy-level goals for diversity in participation, both at the portfolio and the program levels.